Carl sank into his seat on the crowded airplane and closed his eyes, eager for the long flight ahead to be over as soon as possible. Just as the cabin doors were closing and the attendants began final checks, he felt a sudden jolt against the back of his seat. He turned around to see a young boy, no more than 6 or 7, sitting in the row behind him. The boy had a mischievous grin on his face as he kicked Carl's seat again. "Hey there, can you please stop kicking my seat?" Carl asked in a friendly tone, trying to get the boy to stop before things escalated. The boy's mother sat next to him, completely absorbed in her magazine. Oblivious to her son's antics, she did not look up or reprimand him. The boy's grin widened as he geared up and delivered another firm kick to the back of Carl's seat. Carl clenched his jaw in frustration. This was not how he wanted to spend the next 5 hours. He contemplated alerting the mother, but hesitated to cause a scene. The plane accelerated down the runway, and the repeated kicks continued, each one making Carl's seat lurch forward. He took a deep breath and braced himself for the inevitable next jolt, realizing this was going to be a very long and uncomfortable flight. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Just hours before, Carl had been completely at peace and in a great state of mind. He had arrived early at the airport after a brief business trip in Boston. The last couple of days had been a whirlwind of meetings and presentations. As a senior project manager in a leading tech firm, he was no stranger to the pressures of tight deadlines and high expectations. This trip had been especially crucial, involving negotiations with potential clients that could make or break their quarter's targets. During the day, he navigated through back-to-back meetings, each requiring his utmost attention and expertise. Evenings were no less hectic, filled with networking events and late-night strategy sessions with his team. Sleep was minimal and restless, his mind constantly buzzing with data figures, project timelines, and potential client queries. Despite the exhaustion, Carl felt a sense of accomplishment. He had successfully secured a promising deal, a testament to his hard work and perseverance. It was these moments of success, brief and far between, that reminded him why he endured such a demanding career. Now, waiting at the gate of the airport, he craved nothing more than to unwind, process the events of the trip, and mentally prepare for the upcoming challenges. He had planned to use this flight as a much-needed break, a brief period of disconnection from the relentless pace of his job. He sank back in the stiff airport seat, checking his watch for what felt like the 100th time, just 10 more minutes until boarding. He let out a sigh of relief. After the non-stop hustle of this work trip, he was more than ready to settle into his comfy business class seat for the long flight home. As the minutes ticked by, he envisioned stretching out his legs, enjoying the extra space and amenities. He had paid extra for the comfort of business class after the high-stress trip. He needed this time to decompress. Right on time, the gate agent announced boarding for business class passengers. Eagerly, Carl jumped up and made his way to the front of the line, his boarding pass in hand. Just a few more steps, and he would be relaxing in his seat, unwinding with a drink in hand. But as he approached the desk, the gate agent gave him an apologetic look. "Sir, it seems there's been an issue with our seating. The flight is overbooked, and we don't have any more space in business class." Carl felt his excitement turning into frustration. After all the hard work he had put into his work project, now this? He took a deep breath to steady his voice. "What do you mean overbooked? I paid for a business class seat weeks ago." The agent nodded, her expression sympathetic. "Yes, I understand you booked a seat in business class. Unfortunately, we've had several passengers with upgraded tickets show up for this flight, more than we have space for. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience, but we will need to move you to economy for this flight." Carl clenched his jaw, trying to hold back his rising anger. This was unbelievable. After endless days of stressful meetings and high-pressure negotiations, he had been looking forward to a peaceful flight home in the spacious business class cabin. "So, because the flight is oversold, I'm the one who suffers?" he asked, his voice tense with frustration. "Am I expected to spend the next 5 hours squeezed into this cramped seat, barely any space for my legs?" Aware of the turning heads and curious glances from nearby passengers, he took a deep breath, striving to keep his composure. "I know this is frustrating, Mr. Williams," the agent replied. "As compensation, we can offer you a full refund for the difference in fare between business and economy, as well as a voucher for a future flight." Carl shook his head. A voucher wasn't going to relax his frazzled nerves or ease his exhaustion after the taxing business trip he'd just been through. He thought longingly of the wide, cushy seat he had selected, the extra attentive flight attendants in business class who would tend to his every need. Hoping a kinder approach might work, he shifted tactics. "Is there any chance someone else could be moved to economy instead?" he asked, his tone laced with desperation. "I genuinely need that business class seat today." The agent gave him a regretful look. "I'm so sorry, but there is just no more room in the business cabin. I wish there was something I could do." Carl picked up his carry-on bag angrily. He felt his meticulously planned flight home unraveling by the second. "This is unacceptable," he said tersely. "I expect much better service than this." With an exhausted sigh, he turned and trudged toward the economy boarding line. So much for a relaxing end to his work trip, he thought. Now he faced 5 stressful hours in a cramped seat, all hopes of comfort dashed. He pictured the noise, crying babies, and narrow aisles of economy. When his zone was finally called, Carl walked onto the plane, clutching his ticket. The economy cabin was even more packed than expected. Shoulder to shoulder, passengers squeezed into tight rows. He found his seat, struggled to wedge his bag into the overhead bin, and finally sat down only to have his knees press painfully against the seat in front of him. He twisted in his seat, trying to get comfortable. An elderly woman beside him gave him a sharp look. "Would you stop squirming around so much, young man?" "Sorry," he muttered. "This was going to be a long 5 hours." He glanced enviously toward business class as plush seats reclined and glasses clinked with champagne. As the cabin doors latched and final checks began, Carl felt a jolt against his lower back. A boy, no older than 7, swung his legs freely, his feet landing against Carl's seat. His mother, lost in her magazine, seemed unaware. Each kick hit Carl's spine. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Maybe it would stop after takeoff, but the roar of the engines made it harder to ignore the persistent thuds. He turned around and mustered a tired smile. "Hey there, could you please stop kicking my seat? It's a bit uncomfortable," he said gently. The boy looked at him with an innocent but curious expression. Carl returned to his seat, hopeful. But no sooner had he turned than a firm kick landed again. The boy grinned wider and resumed his steady rhythm, as if drumming with his feet. Carl's fists clenched. This was supposed to be a break, not a test of endurance. As the plane ascended, Carl leaned back in his seat, his eyes drawn to the peaceful clouds outside. He tried to focus on the calm view, blocking out the steady kicks against his seat. But each jolt from behind felt like a shockwave, the thin cushion offering no defense. Carl turned again, this time addressing the mother directly. "Excuse me, could you please get your son to stop kicking my seat? It's very disturbing." Finally, looking up from her magazine, she gave a dismissive shrug. "Oh, kids will be kids. He's just keeping busy." Carl's irritation boiled over. Occupied? At the expense of other passengers? Maybe it's time for some parenting lessons. Her expression turned sharp. "Excuse me? Are you saying I don't know how to parent my child?" "Yes," Carl said bluntly. "If I had a child, he'd be taught to respect others, especially in tight quarters like this." The tension escalated quickly, their voices rising over the hum of the engines. The woman responded with sarcasm. "Thanks for the parenting tips, Mr. Expert. Got more advice for us struggling moms?" Carl's face flushed with anger. "Maybe start by actually paying attention to your child instead of that magazine. It's not rocket science." Other passengers began turning their heads, and the woman shot back. "If you had kids, maybe you'd understand. But no, you just want the world to cater to you." Their sharp words cut through the cabin noise. The boy, now wide-eyed, had finally stopped kicking, sensing the tension in the air. Flight attendants approached, trying to de-escalate. Before Carl could respond, the elderly woman seated beside him leaned in. "Young man enough," she said firmly. "The boy has stopped. You continuing this is ruining the flight for everyone else." Her words, calm but clear, shifted Carl's perspective. Looking around, Carl saw the eyes of passengers watching. Embarrassed, he realized how much attention he had drawn. With a sigh, he turned back to the window, trying to reclaim the serenity he'd sought at the beginning of the flight. But the mother couldn't resist one last comment. "Yes, listen to the lady. Women are always right, aren't they?" she said with a mocking tone. Carl's fists tightened, his anger threatening to return. But he remembered the elderly woman's words and forced himself to remain silent, redirecting his focus inward. Then another kick. Carl exhaled slowly and turned, this time with calm. Looking at the boy, he offered a gentle smile. "Hey, buddy, "Do you think you could stop kicking my seat? It's making it hard for me to relax," he said kindly, hoping that reason might finally succeed where anger had failed. The boy looked back curiously. Carl offered a calm smile. "I know it's hard to sit still on planes. How about drawing instead? I've got a pencil and notebook." As he reached for his bag, the boy's mother leaned over. "Excuse me, don't speak to my child without my permission," she snapped. Caught off guard, Carl replied, "I was just trying to—" But she cut him off again. "Talk to me, not him." Carl, holding back frustration, nodded and turned away. He had genuinely tried to help, and now even that effort had been shut down. Something in Carl snapped. If she wouldn't stop it, he would. He formulated a plan. Waving down a flight attendant, he asked for a cup of ice-cold water. When it arrived, he held it quietly, waiting. Another kick landed hard. That was his cue. Feigning surprise, Carl jerked forward and accidentally tipped the cup backward. The freezing water splashed onto the mother, soaking her and lightly hitting the boy as well. She gasped, her magazine slipping to the floor. "I'm so sorry," Carl said quickly. "I got startled by the kick," she stammered, stunned, while Carl added, "It's hard to hold things when your seat is kicked repeatedly." Reactions from nearby passengers were split. Some nodded in sympathy, understanding Carl's frustration. Others whispered disapprovingly, catching fragments like, "a grown man," and "unbelievable." The boy's mischievous grin had vanished, replaced by silence and a flicker of regret. Flight attendants rushed over with towels, asking if everything was all right. Carl replied calmly, "Just an accident." The mother, now embarrassed, avoided eye contact. The boy didn't kick again, the cabin settled into quiet. For the remainder of the flight, Carl finally had peace. As the plane descended, he gazed out the window, feeling satisfied. His plan had worked, the kicks had stopped, and the disruptive duo had learned a lesson. But a small pang of doubt crept in. Had he overreacted? He had certainly disturbed the flight, just in a different way. Still, he reassured himself. They had started it. He had simply ended it creatively and effectively. As the plane landed, Carl gathered his things and sighed. He hadn't gotten the restful journey he hoped for, but one thing was certain. Next time, he'd book first class no matter the cost.